Hey guys, the other day I was using my bandsaw and all of a sudden, all this like little black residue dust was depositing around the blade at the cut. For a minute, I had no idea what was happening, and then bang! The belt came off, it banged around the inside of the casing. That startled me. Then it hit me that the bandsaw blade had come off because the tire had disintegrated. And I was now without a bandsaw to finish my cuts or my project. Super drag. So what is a bandsaw tire? The bandsaw tire is the rubber that stretches around tightly around the drive wheel and the follower wheel to protect the blade from touching that wheel directly. The tire actually grips the blade as the blade rotates around the wheels. If the tire stretches or wears out too much and no longer grips the blade that well, then the blade will not turn or it'll come off like it did in my case or disintegrate. So I decided I needed a replacement, so I decided to try out those new urethane bandsaw belts that I read about. They're supposedly quieter and they cost a little bit more, but sounds like it's worth it. Now bandsaw tires, they come 20% undersized and you have to stretch them around the saw's wheels. That's the tricky part, but while it's tricky, it shouldn't scare you. So I want to just show you how I did mine. It's pretty easy. I actually make a jig for it, so let's talk about that. And by the way, none of these are my ideas. They've been around for years. They're well-known tips and tricks that I've learned from my mentor. So the first step, obviously, just unplug your unit, loosen the tension of the blade, bring the wheel down, take the blade off the tool. Then remove the bandsaw wheel. I removed the top one. That's the one that disintegrated for me. Once removed, I completely remove the old tire and any residue left behind. You can use an old a screwdriver to pry off the old tire, or you could cut it with a utility knife or scrape it with a scraper. But you have to scrape away the old adhesive and tire fragments. I've used a putty knife before, and then I use some rags and some sandpaper and acetone to kind of, or lacquer thinner to clean that off. I actually ended up using some sandpaper and like wet sanded the wheel to remove stubborn residue. Look, the overall goal is to get the bandsaw wheel back to bare metal surface, nice and clean. So I've seen a few methods on how to put the bandsaw tire back. Some folks soak the tire in hot water up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit for like 5 minutes. And the idea behind that is to make it pliable enough to stretch over the rim. Some folks put a C-clamp on one end and stretch it. I don't do that, it's too hard. I like the jig method. I make a jig and I hope that you'll see why I like it. So I make this job site jig here, a workshop jig, and I stretch it over the wheel. It takes 5 minutes to make the jig and about 30 seconds or less to mount the tire. So here's how I make the jig. I just get some scrap 2x4. You do need some things, right? So I need scrap 2x4, clamp it right to my bench. Then I use a dowel. I pick a dowel that will fit in the center of my wheels, like an axle. And I drill a hole and I put that dowel into the 2x4 and I put the wheel right on top of it so that the wheel can now spin like an axle. Then I drill a second hole approximately 3/4 inches out and away from the edge of the wheel, the bandsaw wheel, and slightly at an angle in towards the wheel so that the dowel tilts away from that. Then I cut a PVC pipe that just fits over the dowel. I found a small piece of pipe, and that acts almost like to rotate around the dowel without friction. Now here's a tip. Before you do any of this, take some sandpaper and lightly sand the underside of your urethane tire. That's a surface that you're gonna be gluing, and you're gonna do this with a little bit of sandpaper just to create a little better adhesion for the glue. We're gonna use contact cement. Then you're gonna place the urethane band over the tire and the PVC pipe at the same time, and you're going to slowly rotate away from that PVC very slowly until the tire is on the wheel. When it's all done, you can lift the wheel right off the dowel, and then you can put it back onto the bandsaw. Now, I personally leave one of the dowels in the wheel, in the tire, and I'm going to use that to keep the tire off the wheel so I can insert contact cement. I'm going to actually roll the dowel away from the fresh contact cement. I'm going to apply cement to the top and bottom. So the top of the band and the bottom of the wheel. I'm going to get both surfaces. Just rolling away from the fresh glue as I apply more glue until I make it all the way around. You can use the PVC pipe or the dowel to do this. And when you're done, you want to take the PVC pipe or the dowel and you want to use it at an angle along the edges of the wheel and rub that urethane band in tight to get it set tight into the tire. By doing this, you're going to help the bandsaw tire seat into the wheel grooves It's also going to help spread the adhesive and probably squeeze some adhesive out. So you're going to have to clean that stuff out. If tire trimming is necessary, to match the width of the tire to the width of the wheel rims, the tire has to be on the wheel before trimming. So basically all you're going to do is you're going to trim with a sharp utility knife after applying the adhesive and when everything is set. And then you want to clean off any adhesive while it is still wet. Use acetone or lacquer thinner. For proper blade tracking, the bandsaw has to have a crown on it, the crown surface. And some bandsaws have crowned wheels, some don't. If your bandsaw does not have a crown wheel, crowning will be necessary to create satisfactory tracking of the blade. Look, this can be done easily by using some sandpaper and just holding at a slight canted angle. And you can do this by holding the sandpaper and just spinning the wheel a little bit by hand, turning the saw, or if it's the power wheel, you could turn the saw on a little bit and just hold it at a cant. Just be careful doing that. Once this is complete, reinstall the blade, align everything, adjust the proper blade tension, and test out your saw. Guys, I hope this helped. I hope it showed an easier way to deal with these stubborn bandsaw tire belts. I'm Rob Robillard. We'll see you next time here at Concord Carpenter.